Hello and welcome back to the Championship Lowdown podcast. I am joined here once again with Ollie. Welcome back, Ollie.
Hello, everybody.
And we are back for another review. This time it is, I believe, of week 9, or game week 9, I should say. Obviously, we had the games midweek, but now with another weekend of games done, we're back to review the slate from this weekend. And I think there's only one place to start with this weekend, and it is the East Anglian derby. And I will say, preface before we get into anything about the result, yes, I am fully aware that I was wrong in the last episode. It was actually 2009 was the last time, at the time of recording, that Ipswich had beaten Norwich. Don't know why the article was wrong that I was reading, but there we are. So just anyone comment in, I'm not an idiot. I did check, and I realised about 5 seconds after we finished the segment that I was wrong. But I guess my point is irrelevant anyway, Ollie, because the duct is over for Ipswich. They won 3-1 at home. Big win for them, and as I said, finally ending that horrible string of results.
Mad, really, mate. 16 years, 19 years, who's counting, really? I suppose Ipswich are counting now. Big statement win from Ipswich this weekend. I think putting that 16 years of hurt to bed. Obviously, finally breaking that curse at home at Portman Road against Norwich. It feels to me like it wasn't really just a win. That it feels like it was won over on them. It was a bit of a passionate affair, wasn't it? It's like a real sort of how can you say it, really? Sort of like an exorcism, if you like, of putting that past frustrations behind them. I think it was one of them games where it was always going to start sort of nervy. And as somebody told us in the comments of the last podcast, actually, it's the Old Farm derby now, isn't it? That rather than the East Anglian derby. So the Old Farm. So yeah, obviously cagey start in a game, as you'd expect for two teams who we alluded to in the last podcast were under a bit of pressure, really. Obviously, Norwich starting the game in 19th, Ipswich only a few places above that, really. But yeah, obviously Ipswich started pretty well going into the game, with Philogene getting a goal disallowed early on. Grew into the game probably quicker than what Norwich did, and then obviously scoring early on with Kipre smashing in from that corner, giving them to a nice start. But yeah, it was sort of a cagey game to watch, but it was an enjoyable one, I thought. What did you make of that first sort of opening minutes in that game?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because, as I said in a few episodes, with derby games, you tend to get really cagey affairs that don't have many goals in it, and it ends up being quite a boring watch. We see it quite a lot. But this was sort of the opposite. You can't really complain with a 4-goal game in a derby. Far from an Ipswich perspective, it's huge for both their season and the club, obviously. You never want your rivals to have that many years of success over your head. So it's nice for them to finally end that sort of horrible run of games against Norwich. Even though the year they went up, we still couldn't do it. So it just felt like it was an inevitability that had to end at some point. For Norwich's sake, as you said, start the day in 19th, remain in 19th. Ipswich now climb to 9th with that win. So much more looking towards where they want to be, aiming towards them top 6 places. But yeah, it's an interesting one for Norwich now moving forward, because obviously with Liam Manning, the pressure's got to be mounting after a derby loss. It's only going to make things worse realistically. But Ipswich, I feel like that, as I said, this the win they needed, and I feel like if anything's going to swing momentum in your favour, it's this. Just unfortunately for them, this win of that magnitude comes as we go directly into another international break.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? Obviously, the timing's a difficult one, and maybe the break will come at the right time for Norwich, though. To be fair, because they've been one of those sides that we've spoke about a few sides this season who are just complacent, and they're just lacking that consistency this season. And maybe this breakout's come at the right time for Norwich, and they can really sort of focus on getting those systems a little bit more tightened up and trying to really get back to playing the Norwich way, because they've got a side who they shouldn't be in 19, should they? They've got a side with quality, and we know what Norwich can do. They've been a mainstay in the Championship now for a number of years. We expect them to be sort of challenging playoffs, top end of the league, but for whatever reason or not, it's just not seemed to have clicked for them this season. And then that derby this weekend, obviously you're looking at that Ipswich side who you're expecting at some point to click, and then to click in a derby match and to get obviously Philogene scoring that absolute worldie. He's just on fire at the minute, that lad. It's like, and it's one of them goals, isn't it? It's gonna go down in sort of Derby Day sort of folklore down at Portman Road. That they're going to remember that for a long, long time, aren't they? Because the quality that kid's got. We saw it for a while he was at Hull City, obviously, and you could see some of the magic he'd come out with, whether it be a Rabona or something like that here and there. He's just so elusive and such a maverick of a player, such a talent. And then to have him playing in the Championship and still producing that magic it's a joy, really. And I think we should enjoy it while it lasts. I think a player of that ilk he's not going to last in the Championship for too much longer. Ipswich will be obviously wanting to keep hold of him and hopefully drag him towards that sort of promised land again and get him back into the Premier League. But you can imagine that if they don't do that, someone's going to come and snoop for him, aren't they?
No, 100%. He said there's so many talented players in this division, and he is very much in the high end of that sort of bracket. But yeah, as I said for Norwich, that they'll be buzzing to get into the international break and just get a break in from whatever this just horrible run has been for them. But I think the pressure's on them now to come back after this break, bounce back and look to get a result because, I think it's Bristol City next up, which isn't exactly an easy game either. So it's going to be difficult, but they need to start finding results because I was really high on Norwich before the season started and they haven't really backed me up at all. They've been pretty dreadful in the opening sort of 9 games of the season, sitting in 19th. I would never have expected that going into the season, especially with how good Manning was at Bristol City last year. And I feel like he had a better team than he did last year. But it is interesting to see why they're so far down the table, really. But yeah, I think with Ipswich now, I should see them kick on. As I said, they would have liked to not have the break straight after a massive win like that because obviously confidence will be through the roof going into the next game. But we'll see if they can continue their form after the international break. Next up, we have Hull City. Ollie, your Hull City beating Sheffield United by 1-0. Thanks to a goal from David in the first half. And we've said it a lot this season, but Sheffield United, the struggle just doesn't seem to have an end, does it?
They just didn't have a cutting edge, mate. It was one of them games where they had a lot of ball and they were passing it around relatively nicely, Sheffield United, but they just didn't really look dangerous. Apart from they had a couple of chances where we'd be wide open, which we generally often do in games because we don't particularly defend very well. But they just couldn't seem to crack through the defence, and obviously they've got a bit of unfortunate, a bit of bad luck on their side, whether it be. They had a shot in the first half which cannoned off the post. There was they had loads of room and they just couldn't capitalise on those chances and that sort of dominating possession and territory, really. And then they just freed up a little bit of space on that right hand side where Louis Coyle, instead of playing it to Geldart as he'd been doing, he just floated a nice sort of inch perfect cross across, really. And there's David Akintola who controls it nicely, and albeit it does get a big deflection and it goes in, but you need that little bit of luck when you're trying to pull away, and that's the first clean sheet we've had at the MKM Stadium in 26 games, and I can't actually remember the last time we won 1-0 at home. It's just a long time, but to be able to go in and then grind out that win, I think it's shown a lot of character there because I've obviously alluded to in the preview to this game. I actually expected us to concede. We should have conceded. There was a penalty given away in the 88th minute with Ajayi, and then Harrison Burrows steps up, and he just didn't look confident at all, and then he just kind of rolled it to Panda, which was a relatively easy save. But we spoke about Panda, didn't we, in the build up, and saying that he needed that confidence boost, and obviously saving that penalty and keeping a clean sheet at home will really carry his confidence up going into that international break. So. Hopefully that'll be a little bit of a stepping stone for us and we can build on that 1-0 win. But Sheffield United, where did they go from here? They're still rock bottom. They've still only got those 3 points. And, I know the next game when they come back is a home game against Watford. So on paper, it looks like a nice tie to be able to turn that misfortune round. But, yeah, what do you make of that?
It's weird, isn't it? This team with so much quality and, everyone sort of predicted them in the top 6 to start the season. And here we sit with them bottom going into the second international break. I mean, if you said about your chances, if you look at the statistics, you wouldn't believe it was a Hull win. 2.52 XG compared to Hull's 0.45, 13 shots compared to Hull's 5. But the big stat, obviously 3 big chances for Sheffield United, none of them taken. Hull didn't actually have a big chance according to this. But yeah, 3 big chances missed. I mean, and obviously the penalty is obviously one of them huge chances. From that distance, from the penalty spot, you shouldn't be missing, and he does. I just can't make out what to think with Sheffield United as to what is going wrong, because I'm sat looking at the team now. There is so much quality in this team.
There is.
You've got Michael Cooper, who's established himself as one of the best goalkeepers in the division last season. Tanganga was one of the best centre-backs in the division since he's joined Millwall. You've got like Ogbene, who's always been good at this level. Gus Hamer, I mean, we know everything
about
Gus Hamer.
O'Hare, and there's such a strength in depth as well. Ben Mee at centre half, there's players there with so much, experience and Premier League experience as well. There, I mean, I thought Ogbene was a real good outlook for him at weekend, and he looks like to cause some serious sort of damage, and obviously they just need a little bit of luck. I think Sheffield United, I think they'll get out of trouble. I do think they've got enough quality to get out of trouble. I still don't think they're going to be down there at the end of the season. They should pull away, really, but they need to start taking chances. But I think that'll come with confidence, really. They've obviously got Danny Ings coming off the bench, who won the penalty against Ajayi. So they've got quality. I was looking at Tom Davis coming off the bench, and they are riddled with quality. It's just they can't seem to click, and they can't seem to apply that cutting edge to a game at the moment. And you've got to expect Wilder to turn it around. I think, like we've just named all those players, it's surely to turn it around, don't they?
Well, we thought it would be a quicker transition to turning around results than it has been. That they probably are begging for this international break, and I'm sure they'll be buzzing to see it finally come around, because it's, as you said, they've lost every game bar one. There's no draws. There's none of this. They've lost every single game.
And that was only no disrespect, but it was Oxford that they beat. So it's like, we're expected to kind of be in and around that relegation zone at the end of the season. So yeah, they're in a bit of bother.
It just includes like 5-0 loss to Ipswich. You're talking losing to Millwall at home, 4-1 to Bristol City on the opening day. I think everyone was a bit shocked at that to begin with. Losing to Swansea, it's not the easiest run of games, but they shouldn't be losing every single one with a team of that quality.
No, I mean, and like I said, they will have been disappointed with the result of the weekend. Like you said, they probably did enough to get a goal and more than enough to get a draw out of the game. But obviously, there's just whether that be luck on their side or just not just having that confidence to take their chances. And talk about a team who needs an international break. Here's one of them.
Yeah,
more than anybody, I think.
Put it this way, Chris Wilder's got to start getting some results together, otherwise he's going to end up in the same position as Ruben Sellers very quickly, because they proved their own patience with negative results with him going 6 games into the season. And if Wilder keeps up this run of form, I can imagine that he's going to join Sellers very quickly in being unemployed, because this isn't a team that can afford to be relegated with the players that they have in this team.
I mean, just going back to us, ever since we come back after the international break and we've got Birmingham, Leicester and Charlton the next 3 games. So that result against Sheffield United was a big one for us.
Needed it, absolutely. We'll move on. And speaking of big results, Coventry versus Sheffield Wednesday. Coventry 5-0 win at Hillsborough. Thomas Asante with a brace, Hadji Wright, Ellis Sims and Sakamoto all getting in the scoring action. Sheffield Wednesdays, the whole city of Sheffield seems to be in an absolute disarray in a footballing sense at the minute. They remain 23rd, obviously only worsened by Sheffield United. But Coventry City, 27 goals in 9 games. For context, their goal difference is plus 20. The nearest goal difference to them is Ipswich on plus 7. I mean, 20 goal difference. 5 wins, 4 draws, 0 losses. The only unbeaten team left for the Championship. These have to be an automatics favourite, surely.
But yeah, there's nobody near them at the moment. They're formidable, aren't they? I will go back and say it again, because I seem to be saying this on every single podcast. The only team they've not scored against was us. So I'm sticking with that. I'm keeping with that one. I'm keeping that going till the end of the season. Here's a schooling, won it at the weekend. 2-0 up inside 13 minutes. Obviously, Thomas Asante getting those 2 early goals for them. And Sheffield Wednesday, as you'd expect, are going to be all over the place against a team who, 27 goals in 9 games. That's 3 goals a game they're averaging. That's 3 goals a game.
There was a game we didn't score in as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's absolutely ridiculous. everybody's playing, aren't they? They've got a team there who Frank Lampard has got them playing, and they're just tearing teams to bits. And you've got, like you say, you've got Thomas Asante, Hadji Wright, Sakamoto bagging in, Ellis Sims joining that again. But the quality they've got all over that pitch, it's difficult to see where they're actually not going to win a game, because they're coming up against teams and they're not just winning, they're just blowing everybody away. It's they've got Blackburn next at home. Who, I mean, you can't see anything but a Coventry win there. Portsmouth's going to be a tough game away, and then they've got Watford and Wrexham. So where's the next loss going to come from for Coventry? Because you'd expect them to win those few games and probably score goals in doing so. Jeff, what do you say about Sheffield Wednesday? You can't judge them too much on this game, because obviously, like we just alluded to, Coventry are scoring goals for fun against everyone. So, there's a problem for Pedersen, but we all know that. And, your guess is as good as mine with what's going on with Sheffield Wednesday, where their next result's going to come from. Only time will tell.
Well, I did say I didn't know about them not winning until January. They may only win one until January with the way they're going. I will correct you, by the way. Coventry also didn't score against Leicester, so you're not the only team. It was a 0-0. So they're 2 0-0s, and they've still got 27
We're in good company then. Leicester don't concede too many, so I'll take that.
No, but they have. So that means they have scored 27 goals in 7 games.
7 games. That is just that's bonkers, isn't it?
If you look at their last results, it's 3-0 against Birmingham, 4-0 against Millwall, and 5-0 against Sheffield Wednesday. So that means it's going to be 6-0 against Blackburn, which I wouldn't even put out of the realms of possibility.
Would it?
They'd just be going up and up.
Not surprise you.
7-1 against QPR, who are in the top 6 now. 5-3 against Derby.
QPR, mate. Just tell you what Coventry did to QPR is turn their season on its head. You'd hope that every team that they're doing that to, they could expect the same reaction. QPR have just done wonderful things since then. I don't think they've lost, have they, since then?
But as you said, the next game for Coventry, where you look at it being like a real challenge, is probably Stoke on the 8th of November. Maybe West Brom after that, if you don't even think that. So it's a real possibility. If you're establishing early favourites, even for the league title, I think Coventry have to be that team. They just
promoted by Christmas?
I wouldn't go that far. It is the Championship after all. But I said, I just don't see a weak spot in this Coventry team. I'm just looking at it now. I really don't see where the weakness is in this team. I wouldn't point out anyone who is like not maybe up to it, or maybe not as good as they'd like. You got people like King, Kesler, Hayden, Ellis Sims, Luke Wolfenden coming off the bench. I mean, they'd start for a lot of teams in this division. So it's mental to see for Coventry. But as far as Sheffield Wednesday goes, I mean, you sort of said it. It's just a negative spiral. Obviously, they look to have pulled themselves out of it with the last 3 games. You've got a big point away at Birmingham, which doesn't come around often, a good point at home to QPR, and a big win away at Fratton Park. And you think, maybe they're not that bad. And then they get absolutely battered again, understandably so, by a very good team. And they're still probably overperforming what we expected from Sheffield Wednesday going into the season. I think we thought they'd barely win a game, get relegated very early, and it'd be done. But they're not doing that. They're only a point away from safety. So I'm sure they'll be all right. They look to Charlton, though, next, and Middlesbrough. These are tough games against very good sides. So it's going to be interesting to see where Sheffield Wednesday go from here. But I really cannot see a big challenger at the minute to Coventry as far as even the league title. I think you push it past the automatics now and say they're probably the early title favourites moving forward.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think there's anybody near them at the moment. It just, like you say, they're just absolutely formidable under Lampard, and Lampard's got to take all the credit. He's done an absolute wonderful job there. And I'm just looking at stats of that game there, and their XG of 4.88, they've pretty much lived up to it, haven't they? They've converted pretty much 10 shots on target, 5 goals. Yeah. Incredible, absolutely incredible. 42 touches in the opposition box. I mean, Sheffield Wednesday actually had more possession than Coventry, which is cracking, isn't it? But I think it just goes to show the quality, the gulf in quality between the two sides there, and Coventry absolutely more than right to be top of the league.
Absolutely, I don't think anyone can argue with that, and I'm sure they'll continue if they can continue this form going past the international break, then they're going to be very, very hard to catch with the way they score goals, because it looks like the only way to beat them is to outscore them. With the goals that they're putting away, you ain't going to do that. Next up, we have got Millwall versus West Brom. Probably a bit of an upset for the day. Probably the biggest one I could probably pick out of all the results, 3-0 win for Millwall at home to West Brom. Jay Cooper, Aziz, by the way, an absolute screamer in this one. And then Zach Sturge gets the third goal. And Millwall now into 8th, which it sounds like mad to say it's an upset. They're only a place apart in the league, but Millwall seem to have been struggling a bit to what we expect from last season. And then you look more towards now, and West Brom have been good, and the spells of weirdness. But I think anyone expected a 3-0 win for Millwall. Put it that way, Ollie. I was one who predicted West Brom to win this game, and I would never have seen a Millwall battering come in, let alone even though it was at the Den, which we did point out in the preview.
Yeah, we were saying about sort of Millwall's home form and how they've not really lived up to it much this season. But talk about turning it on its head. You know, I mean, against a team like West Brom, who've been fairly consistent, really. And I've said already this season about some of the football they play is quite exciting, but they've just not turned up this weekend, have they? By the looks of it, it's you know, Alex Neil's side has just blown them away, it seems. And that, like you said, with that goal from Aziz, absolute weldy. You know, absolutely one for the highlight reel. That one. Yeah, I just thought, Millwall were more than good for the result. Obviously, West Brom not created enough chances, which might be the sort of tail of their season so far. They're not scoring a great deal of goals, are they? And even though they are playing some decent stuff, they're not really backing it up with the performances to blow teams away like you'd expect from this West Brom side. I mean, like Ryan Mason's come in and done a relatively good job, but like you say, Millwall this weekend, that's some result.
They needed it, Millwall. You know, this sort of fell into a bit of a period of uncertainty, and they come out with a bang and get a big win against a team that's ultimately their competition at the minute for the playoffs. Just one place above them now in the league, and only separated by goal difference, the two teams after that result. But yeah, I was impressed by Millwall again. As I said, I was quite high on them at the beginning of the season because they finished last season so well. You know, they were very unlucky not to be in the playoffs, really. And we've seen it from Millwall a few times in the last couple of years where they've just been a little bit short of that little playoff berth. You know, they get there, and they just miss out at the end. We've seen them on the last day in the recent years. Last year was right at the end. They missed out again. So they're going to want to put that right and get in this time. And they're going about it in the right way. Obviously, you know, they came off a 4-0 loss to Coventry and responded with that. So that proves that they've got that bounce back ability. It was an interesting one because we played them a couple of weeks ago, and I wasn't impressed. I'll be honest. I thought they were pretty poor. I think we more or less gifted them a point through a poor defending, and then we just didn't look to put the game away. So I was a bit worried for them in that one, but and then they go into a 4-0 loss, and I'm thinking, God, this could get bad. But they've responded really, really well with a big win against a very good West Brom side, all things considered. This is not a weak West Brom side at all, and it's a very well coached West Brom side. So I think they'll be absolutely buzzing to come out of that with such a huge result, which could hopefully sway their form back in the right direction, you think?
Yeah, I think so. It's just one thing they really need to consider is obviously if they are sort of what's what I'm looking for, if they are trying to go for a push to that playoffs, they've still got that -3 goal difference, and that seems to be a story of Millwall's sort of push every single season. We were on about it last, but we talked about it in previous pods where they seem to be up there, but they've always got a negative goal difference for some reason. It's like they just need to be able to sort of capitalise. And then when they are winning games, they need to then not follow it up by getting beaten handsomely. Because like you said, when you're getting beat 3-4, it's all right winning 3-4. But if you're going to win 1-0 in return, you're not giving yourself much chance to get in those playoff places with that goal difference. So like I say, at the moment, they say behind West Brom on goal difference. So
yes,
it's a typical story. It's a typical story, isn't it? Typical Millwall story. They need to tighten that up.
They're on -3, West Brom are on -1. So yeah, that's just if you look comparison, Ipswich one place below Millwall on +7.
That's it, you see. So it's like when Ipswich come out and start putting them wins together, which you'd expect them to do, they go above them anyway because they've already got a kind of a point, if you like, just by the goal difference. So that's something that Millwall need to work on, and obviously West Brom do as well. Massive win for them. I think Alex Neil's got to take a lot of credit for that one. It's a big win. Performances from I thought Billy Mitchell was really good at the weekend, and just gives them a real satisfying result going into that international break. And yeah, fair play to Millwall. I didn't see that one coming.
No, yeah, absolutely. I will say before we move on that if you want to really put goal difference into perspective, Coventry have 3 times more goals scored than Millwall after 9 games. Just I said that is the case for a lot of teams, including West Brom. It's the same thing. They both scored 9 goals, but West Brom conceded 10 to Millwall's 12. Then you look at Ipswich, who scored 15. Bristol City, 2 places below Millwall, scored 15. Watford has scored 11. Even we scored 10 in 12th. So, you're talking the next 4 teams below you have all scored more goals than you, would all have a better goal difference. So it's not encouraging signs, because that's a massive advantage, especially when we get to the later points in the season, because we know how tight this league can be. But as you said, summed up pretty well, a very, very nice win for Millwall. Next up, and I said that one might be the upset of the week. I think I'm going to retract that statement. I'm going to drop it onto this one because we're going to Portsmouth versus Middlesbrough, and it was a 1-0 win for Portsmouth this time. I think that has got to be the shock for us. I think I'm going to retract. I'm going to put it to this one. This has got to be the shock. It was, I believe, it was Min Hyuk Yang who got the goal in the early stages of the game. And that was enough to deny Middlesbrough their unbeaten run in the Championship is now over, comes to an end at the hands of Portsmouth. And for Borough, you have to think, with a chance to go back top of the table, despite Coventry's result, they're going to be very, very disappointed with that result.
Absolutely. Portsmouth are trying to get that sort of raucous Fratton Park crowd behind them again, and this is going to do them the world of good by being the first team to beat Middlesbrough this season. Obviously taking the lead early on in that 22, 23 minutes, something like that. But to then not concede against Middlesbrough, who have found a way seemingly in every game so far this season, I think massive credit's got to go to Pompey for this. It's been a resolute performance really from them, and I think it's set them in good stead going into that international break again. Obviously, huffing and puffing their way towards that victory against Middlesbrough. They'll be disappointed, Middlesbrough. But if you've got a lot of ball and you're still only managing to get 1 shot on target in 90 minutes, you're going to struggle to score goals, aren't you? It's a difficult one. Obviously, I think Pompey's showing a lot of grit and determination there to carry themselves through and get the win here. Really, really good credit. Really big credit to Moutinho's men. Yeah,
I mean, again, it's another game where you look at the stats. If you just didn't know what the score was, you'd probably guess Middlesbrough had won the game. But no, it was Portsmouth with their only shot on target. Only 2 shots on target in this entire game, one each of these teams. It must have been a pretty diabolical watch for everyone at Fratton Park and anyone watching on television, of course.
I can imagine the Pompey fans would have been quite happy with that, though, mate.
Yeah, so they won't complain. But it's one of them games where I come away thinking, God, that was awful. But at least we got the win. Whereas Borough think, God, that is awful, and we really should have won. I just, when you're battling for it, I said it so many times in the last couple of episodes, but when the teams at Ipswich, Southampton, etc., who are your title favourites going into the year, have a bad start, you need to make the most of it and pull the gap away, because the second that one of them 2 teams picks up momentum, they'll be back in the hunt for the title. And Coventry are doing well to sort of do that. And again, they're only 1 point apart, but it's a negative result for Middlesbrough. Could have put themselves, I believe they would have been 2 points clear at the top of the table had they'd won that game. Going on to going to 21 points after 9 games, which is a really, really good start. And then, as I said, you have Ipswich on 13, so you have an 8-point buffer to probably your biggest threat. Even Leicester on 16, so you have a 5-point buffer to them as well. So I think just one of them results you need to get over the line. And as I said, Portsmouth haven't been as good at home as we expected them to be, as they were last year, especially. But just couldn't quite do it. They've gone back to that hard to play against, hard place to go. And they finally get a win after what's been a run of, I believe, 4 games without a win, going dating back to their Preston victory in August. So it's been a while since we've seen Portsmouth on the winning side of things. But again, another team who would be like, I wish we didn't have the international break. Although looking at Portsmouth fixtures, I think they might be quite glad, because the next 5 games are Leicester, Coventry, Stoke, Birmingham and Wrexham.
Oh, wow. That
is an absolute gauntlet.
That is a 1.5. Yeah, they'll be buzzing with it even more so then, won't they? It's maybe the international break has come at the right time for Pompey, obviously, to build themselves up for those run of games. Are we back to Tuesday, Saturday games as well after the international break, I'd imagine?
Yes, we are.
Yeah. So there's some real tough games coming up in a really short space of time for them. So they'll be even more happy with this result. Just looking at obviously Middlesbrough, when they come back, they've got to back that up, that defeat at Fratton Park with a home game against Ipswich.
Yeah.
So it's I mean, obviously they could be looking hey up. It was a cat. They could be looking at back to back defeats. Ipswich. Middlesbrough, sorry. Cat through me then, stupid.
Yeah, I mean, it really is a sort of interesting situation for both teams. I said Pompey probably buzzing that break has come in retrospect, because that is an absolute gauntlet of games to follow up. So they really needed that result, because that you can't imagine them taking too many points out of any of them games. After the break, and Middlesbrough, as you said, for the huge test with Ipswich, so I just mentioned about pulling the gap away to teams like that. You've got to take advantage when you have the opportunity to take points off them yourself. So they'll be looking pretty desperate to win that one as well. Friday night under the lights of the Riverside as well. For the perfect time you want to face a team like Ipswich, get the team behind you, get the fans behind you. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Middlesbrough bounce back from that. As I said, the break will come at a good time. They've had a bit of a rough result last couple, 2 draws and a loss going into the break in the last 3. Only 1 win in the last 5, despite them still being second in the league. So I'm sure they'll be happy to see the international break come.
They've only scored 12 goals this season. To be sat in second with 12 goals, and obviously you compare that to the team directly above you who've got 15 more, which is just incredible, isn't it? Like I say, this international break could be a time to sort of reset and get those systems working again.
Definitely. So they're going to need it, because it's, as I said, another tough run. Obviously, they got Sheffield Wednesday after Ipswich. If they don't win that Ipswich game, they know they have to win that Sheffield Wednesday game. So we'll see how they do with that one. Finally, of the games we'll talk about in a great bigger detail, and unfortunately, it is Swansea versus Leicester. As much as I don't want to talk about it, I have no choice. It's 3-1 win for Leicester in Swansea. It was Jordan James, an absolute worldie. To take them to get them off the mark. We then get a penalty, which saw Adam Eder score his first goal of the season, and then Fatu decides he's going to score a screamer as well. Another absolutely brilliant goal. I thought we're the most unlucky team in the world here, because we're just conceding absolute worldies you can't do anything about. And then Vestergaard gets one of the weirdest goals I've ever seen in my life. I don't really know how the ball ended up at his feet, but it did, and he put it away to secure a 3-1 away win in Swansea. I suppose I'll go first in terms of talking about a detail of this game. We're just not very good. It just really boils down to that. And I think Alan Sheehan's time at Swansea is very, very limited, if I'm being honest. I wouldn't think, with a couple more losses, I think it should be the end of his tenure as our manager. We're just not at the level we should be. I think we have a really talented squad, and I think we would be fools to waste it accepting mediocrity when we could really be a team that competes in the playoff positions. We've already proved it in certain games this season that we can be, and put up a fight against these sort of teams. Even in this game, I thought we had spells, but you just got to have that extra quality factor as when you're playing a team like Leicester, because they have it, as proven by 2 absolutely brilliant goals from James and Fatawu. They can just pull that out any minute, so you've got to take your chances when they come. But as far as our football goes, I just think it's just a bit dry. We're not creative enough. We control the ball, but we don't do a lot with it. I think defensively we're fine, and that's how Sheehan loves to set up. He's a defensive-minded manager. He wants us to be strong at the back, but we're not very good in attacks. You've got to find a balance of both. But I've just seen Russell Martin's been sacked as well by Rangers in the last couple of days. So I'm sure our fans will be banging that drum. I hope it's not the case if we did sack Sheehan, that we go back for him. But yeah, Leicester are just very, very, very good. They took the chance when they came. I wouldn't say that they were particularly amazing in terms of overall performance, but they're so clinical. And as I said, 2 moments of absolute magic from Jordan James and Fatu, which is ultimately the difference in this game.
We spoke about Fatu, didn't we, in the build-up to this game, and about how they've got those sort of outlook players and who they can turn a game on ahead in seconds, and they've proved that this weekend. I think obviously Swansea. I mean, I know you've been disheartened with performances and what have you and stuff like that this season, but just to put that into perspective a little bit, it's the first time you've lost at home since March, and that was to Burnley, who absolutely romped the division. So to come up against a team like Leicester, who we know the quality that they've got, to turn that result, to turn up at Swansea and get that result, it's not the end of the world for Swansea. I know that you're a bit disheartened with that you've been playing and stuff like that, and you're used to being in control of games and playing a little bit more sort of fluid, attacking, more controlling style of game, but you are sat in mid-table. You sat in mid-table. You've looked good when I've watched you so far this season. When you've still managed to control those games. It's just there's been times where I've just felt like you just seem to sit on like sort of performances and think, yeah, that'll do, and then just try and coast through for the rest of the game. So I'm wondering if maybe again, seems to be the pattern of this pod where is the international break come at the right time for Swansea? It could well have. It gives you time to reset, reevaluate what's going on, and go again after the international break.
I think it definitely has. As I said, it's just I get the point about our home record, and it has been very good. But at the same time, you look to our last few home games. A 1-1 draw against Millwall, we had plenty of chances to win that game. Obviously, the Forest game was great, but obviously in the Cup, so whatever you want to think about it. The whole game we should have won. We should never have let that game slip away. We just sat, as you said, on it when we shouldn't have, when we could have carried on and buried that one. We sat on it, conceded at the end. We drew to Plymouth, only beat them on penalties in the EFL Cup. Drawing to Watford in the game we should have won as well. Obviously, beating Sheffield United was a good result. But then seeing the rest of their results, it wasn't. It's got progressively worse looking of a result since it happened with how bad they've been. And even against Blackburn on Tuesday away from home, we won the game, but we were awful. It's just Blackburn were spectacularly awful. And that's sort of what got us through the 3 points. Apart from that, we haven't won in the league since Hillsborough. That wasn't that Blackburn game. And, that's a game which we should be winning the end of August as well. Drawing to Hull, losing to Birmingham, who have been pretty poor, all things considered, in recent games. You're drawing to Millwall, who had a bit of a rough run when we played them, and then now I lost to Leicester. It's with Southampton next after the break as well, away. It just begs the question. I just don't think Sheehan is the man to get the most out of this squad. And with the money that we've spent on this squad, I think they need a manager who's going to have them competing for the playoffs, because otherwise it's really hard to justify the amount of money we've spent in this transfer window on a manager who will just coast us into 12th, 13th in the league. I just don't think it's good enough for what we could do this season.
Yeah, I just think the one saving grace from all that is I just think, given how, you look at the league table and you look at the results so far this season, we've shown with our predictions how all over the place they've been. It's this championship season, I know they're always tight and closely run, but this season, it just seems like literally everyone is beating everyone, and you can't call the result. It's so hard to call the result this year. And Swansea are probably about right in terms of where they are in terms of where they are in the league. It's a real difficult one to call, isn't it? Where do you go from if you do let the manager go? Where do you go from there? Who's available, and who would you want to see come in to sort of try and push you towards those playoffs? Who can get the most out of that Swansea side?
My honest first answer is probably Danny Roll. I think I'm surprised he's still unemployed, to be honest. And he showed at Sheffield Wednesday exactly what he can do with how high he managed to put that team, which was not even getting paid at the back end of the season, to get them into mid-table. I think he would be perfect for us. I think it's just a forward-thinking manager who wants to get results, can get results out of whatever team he's handed. And I think it'd be a good one. I think Graham Potter's an interesting candidate. Obviously was at us a couple of years ago. Maybe looks to the Championship to get his sort of mojo back, really, after I think Chelsea sort of
get going again, yeah.
Chelsea sort of killed him off, and then West Ham was sort of the final dagger for his time in the Premier League for now. So I think that's another one we could look at. But I think Danny Roll's the obvious candidate, really. Still unemployed. I don't see why he turn it down. I can't imagine he's going to get all too much better than a mid-table to high-end Championship job. I think that's perfect for him, especially if he ended up getting us promoted. It's going to be brilliant for his CV if he could take a team, or even into the playoffs. That would look brilliant for him after what's been sort of a team that we've been associated with mid-table for the last 6-7 years in this division. So, yeah, it's intriguing. I'd definitely say Danny Roll's probably my top candidate for the job.
Style of played fit quite nicely with Danny Roll as well, wouldn't it? Obviously, he's used to doing that. He's used to doing that sort of having those players around him who can control the game and really put teams under the cosh. So, yeah, it's not a bad shout, that one.
Yeah, well, we will soon find out. I don't know what our owners are thinking. I think it really will depend on the next couple of games, because they don't strike me as owners with a lot of patience for mediocrity if they're going to spend whatever. I think we're the second highest net spend in the entire division in the transfer window, so they're not going to accept anything mediocre. So that's our sort of 6 games that we've run through. We'll have a little run through a couple of minutes on each of the other games that went on at the weekend. So we had the Hollywood Derby between Wrexham and Birmingham. Lived up to the more Derby traditions in a way. Obviously not the Derby, but sort of a tight contested draw. 1-1 Dobson in the first half. Roberts levels it up early in the second, but Birmingham again struggling for form. And again, it's another solid result for Wrexham.
It's a good result for Wrexham, I think. I mean, they didn't really get a look in the first half. In the second half, it was like just a constant pressure from Birmingham trying to get back into the game. But I just thought, obviously, result in the end was probably about right. It's another game that was relatively open. You're going to get that a lot with Wrexham this season, and I think with the Birmingham style of play, where they like to soak up pressure and then hit with their pace. It's a 1-1 result was probably the right one in the end. I think you're looking at the XGs are there 174 for Wrexham, 136 for Birmingham, 174 for Wrexham. So it's probably about right. I mean, I did watch this game. It wasn't that much of an exciting game. I thought that it lived up, didn't really live up to its billing. But yeah, 1-1 result was probably about right.
Yeah, as you said, it was just a tightly contested game, which you expect on these sort of occasions. What I will say though is that video of Tom Wagner from Birmingham, was an interesting one to say the least. I think it's probably one of the worst things I've seen in a while. Don't know what that's all about. Sort of speaks volumes, really, if your American chairman who famous with the MLS atmospheres has to tell you to step up your atmosphere. Not ideal, but yeah, that was an interesting.
I was really surprised by how quiet the fans were just allowing that to happen. I thought that, it's an odd one for me that I don't like that. It's not something that sits right with me in English football.
Seems that if you just throw a bit of money at the club, they'll sort of let you do whatever you want, including have talks like that to your fans. Is an interesting one. Another game which not too much to say about it. Blackburn Stoke, a late goal from Cargbo denied Stoke 3 points at Ewood Park. Just a bit of a nothing game, really, isn't it?
I suppose Blackburn have stopped the rot a little bit though, haven't they? Because they were on, what was it, 4 or 5 games in a row they'd lost, which is it's I think the last time they won a game was against us at our place, where they actually blew us away, to be fair. But yeah, I mean, they stopped the rot a little bit, obviously. Watford as well.
2 games after, but yeah, they were a 3-game losing run plus the whole drama. Ipswich.
I mean, Stoke will be relatively be disappointed with that. I think, obviously, allowing themselves to concede a little bit later on in the game. But to the start of the season, Stoke have had, they're still sat in the playoff places, obviously, albeit on the back of now losing one and then drawing 3 in a row. Again, another team will probably have quite happy with the international break coming and can reset and then start playing like they were again, hopefully after the break. But obviously, Blackburn lost, drew, going into the next game against a nice, easy away game at Coventry.
Yeah, not ideal at all. Next up, another maybe upset, maybe not. QPR with a 2-1 win away at Bristol City. Bristol City took the lead in the first half thanks to Emma Reese, but Richard Kone and I believe, was it Paul Smythe? It was Paul Smythe with the winning goal in the 84th minute to seal a big away win for QPR, which pushes them into the top 6. And as you said, that 7-1 pasting at Coventry seemed to have hit reset on their entire club, and they've actually been quite good since that.
Been incredible, hasn't it? I mean, what? How does that happen? How does something like that happen? You go into a game, you get absolutely slapped off the park. Albeit in that game, Coventry's XG was about 2 or 3. I think they just managed to kill every chance they had. But I mean, massive credit to QPR, because at that point it was like, right, are they a relegation candidate? Are people looking at it as if to say that they might go down this season? They're very leaky defensively, but I think they're unbeaten since then. I don't think they've lost a game. Obviously, prepared to be corrected.
No, you're right. Yeah, they've won 4, drawn 2 since that.
Absolutely incredible. What a turnaround. Fair play. I mean, they lost in the League Cup to Plymouth, but madness. Oh, that was before. Sorry. Yeah, absolutely madness turnaround. Brilliant for QPR. So, what a turnaround to be sat there in the playoffs after. Tell you what, if you'd have said that to them after the 7-1 drubbing, in 5 or 6 games' time, you'll be sat in 6th place. They'd have ripped your hand off.
Yeah, so it's a great turnaround for QPR, and as I said, they're always a hard team to predict because you never really know what you're going to get. But looks like we're getting a pretty decent version of them this year, and Richard Kone's in fine form, as we all expected after his move from Wickham. Next up, Derby won, Southampton won. It was Armstrong in the early stage of the game, but then my favourite player, as I mentioned very many times, Patrick Aguiman, gets the equaliser for Derby, which seals this one as a draw. Again, a game that, Southampton had more shots, but Derby with the better expected goals, the less possession. Again, just a fairly stale 1-1 draw, I think, is the best way to summarise this one.
I think so, yeah. But I mean, you've got to look at Southampton, and they're 17th now, and you look at it. The teams you're going to be comparing them against are going to be your Leicesters, are going to be your Ipswich, aren't they? And I suppose you've got to throw Coventry in the hat now, obviously, given how well they've started. The promotion candidates. Will Still's under pressure, isn't he? He's got to be.
Absolutely.
I mean, 17th in the league. They don't look good in the league for me. They just don't look like they're going to take. They're not playing very good football. They don't look like they're creating many chances. They're certainly not scoring many goals, and they look vulnerable to a goal. And for the amount of quality they've got in that side, they should not be in 17th position. It's another it's to a higher level to the Norwich one. We spoke about Norwich earlier being in 19th, and the fact that they're there and Southampton are 17th, I think that's a real. It's a testament to sort of how badly Will Still's doing in this division, and he's really not sort of. I mean, obviously, he had a shocker in the Premier League last season, but he's kind of carrying on that form in the Championship. Really, he's 17th. They need to be doing a lot better than that with the quality they've got in their side.
Absolutely, this is a team that everyone's sort of associated with going straight back up, and they've just not been at the level. I mean, they'll be fine because they'll have a free win against us after the international break, so I'm sure they'll be all right after that. I'm sure we'll be the team that kick them into gear. But yeah, Derby just seems to be cruising with draws all the time. I can't remember the last time I saw Derby win a game apart from West Brom. But intriguing to see how Southampton move forward with Will Still if this results of just bad times continue. You can't imagine they're going to have all too much patience with the ambitions of that club going into the season. Next up, Preston, 2-0 win over Charlton. The formidable Nathan Jones team crumbles at Deepdale thanks to 2 goals. I believe one was from Thierry Small, who we've spoken about a lot on this podcast as being a very, very good player. And Daniel Jefferson actually gets on the score sheet with the second to kill this one off. But for a team that were on a very, very good run of form as in Charlton, I don't believe they'd lost for at least 4 games. You're going to be happy with that as a Preston fan, which now puts Preston into 4th after 9 games. I don't think anyone saw coming at the start of the season.
Not at all, and fair play to them. I mean, looking at the stats of that game, and that looks like a heavily one-sided game there. I mean, 15 shots, only 3 of them on target, but obviously scoring 2 of them. It's a decent return, 1.61 XG. Charlton not really at the races here by the looks of it. 8 shots, 0 on target. They're only expected 0.5 goals. I suppose it's a typical Charlton performance in whereby they're hoping the other team doesn't score, and you can maybe come away with a point or maybe try and nick a goal, and it's just not come off for them this weekend. And obviously Preston running out comfortable winners by the looks of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Preston continue to prove everyone wrong after what was pretty low expectations at the start of the year, but they've come into it. They've done really, really well. They've had some brilliant results against some very, very top teams. So it'll be intriguing to see if they can keep this format. Obviously, we don't necessarily expect them to be in the playoffs at the end of the year, but if they keep playing like this, there's no reason why they couldn't be. They're a team that's very much associated with being mid-table in this division, seem to always fall. But I think you got to take the table.
A couple of tough games coming up for them. Though they've got West Brom away and then Birmingham at home, so they could really take their credentials going into those next couple.
As I said, you got to take the table with a pinch of salt because I believe after 8 games last year, one of the years, a couple of years ago, Reading were top and they ended up being relegated. And I think Coventry got in the playoffs and they were 23rd or something stupid. So I think you take the table with a pinch of salt.
Forest did it a couple of years back, didn't they? Where they were near the bottom and ended up getting promoted.
So I think a lot can change, but they're doing very, very well. So fingers crossed for them, they can continue that. And finally, Watford 2, Oxford United 1, thanks to 2 goals from Jeremy Ngakia, who had 1 goal in his entire professional career going into this game, has scored twice to counteract an early Max Elenier own goal for Watford. Oxford didn't actually find the back of the net themselves. Watford did it for them in the opening stages, but Oxford now sit in 22nd in the relegation places, where Watford move into 11th, and Watford seem to be settling into their sort of normal mid-table position where they tend to find themselves.
Yeah, I just thought that on the Ngakia thing, I don't know if you saw his quote after the game where he just said, "I was just trying to put it in the area." If that doesn't sum up a player who doesn't score many goals, then there's a quote for you. That's brilliant. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Watford, the middle inside, aren't they? They win generally half their home games, and they probably will stay up and they'll be fine this season. Oxford, they've disappointed me. I did predict them to go down, but yeah, they're starting to really struggle, aren't they? I don't know whether it's because of the quality of the sides in the Championship this season. I do think that, like I said earlier on, I do think this season is a tough division to be in, and Oxford are finding that at the moment.
Yeah, as I said, Oxford, it was always going to be a task. They did well last year, but the quality of teams that came up is much higher than we've ever seen before.
Yeah.
You don't normally have three teams that are all very, very competitive going for the top half of the table that come up. They're normally at least one or two that go straight back down. But when that sort of happens, teams like Oxford are going to fall behind, and they are really struggling to start the year. I think they've had some good results and they've had some good performances, but 6 points from their opening 9 games, sat in the relegation zone, only worsened by a team that's not getting paid and a team that's only not lost one of their games. It's certainly not looking good for Oxford, but as I said, Watford just up and down. The team that you never know what to predict because you never know what Watford side you're going to get on the day. They turn up this one and they get a big win at home. But that is all that we have for you this week. So obviously, we will be back after the international break. We might have a little special videos coming during the break to keep you going with the Championship content. But obviously, there's no games to preview because we have the international games, much to, I'm sure, 99% of Championship fans dismay. Unless your team's being really poor at the minute, you're probably absolutely buzzing that you have 2 weeks without watching them. But thank you very much to Ollie for joining me as always, and we will see you all after the international break.